Okay, fam, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over our core positions going forward in time in the passive income investment portfolio. So with that being said, let's get it. Okay, so the portfolio that I'm talking about today is the Robinhood one. We're not talking about M1 Finance. That's going to come a little bit later. So we went over this a long time ago. There's kind of a threefold way that we're thinking about doing this. So we're thinking about, well, first having kind of the higher yielding total return be initially the base to create the passive income portfolio long term off of, then start moving some of that money over into kind of the mid yield, mid return positions after that, and then going eventually into dividend growth stocks and dividend growth ETFs like SEHD and whatnot. So kind of the mid-range ones that I'm talking about is things like PDI, ACP, SVOL, things like that. And then the dividend growth would be like your DGRO, SCHD, STAG, Main Street, those kinds of positions, or even quarterly paying ones. So let's talk about the first leg of that. So as you guys know, we have all the call debit spreads. Again, the notional value of these once they hit max profit should be roughly around 100,000. Of course, this is not the only crypto positions we have, but it's just kind of once we cash out of these, we're going to move those into passive income assets. So the positions that we're looking at today are going to be, I actually forgot about TSLP, but yeah, TSLP is also going to be one of these. So we do want to have some exposure to Tesla, and TSLP is relatively stable. So these different positions that we're going to be looking at is going to be TSLP, fepi. We may also keep YMAX and YMAG, although that's not at the top of the list right now. So TSLP, fepi. Going down the list here, we got qdte, spyt, aipi, xdte, and then gpix. Of course, there's going to be more than this. So let's talk about it. So in terms of basically, I would say pretty much every single one of these we want to get to at least $100 a month of passive income. With the exception of fepi and aipi, we're actually considering doubling down on this and going for the $200 a month per position. Again, part of the reason for that is because these are very heavily tech and AI weighted. Semiconductors, all that jazz. We want to have exposure to that going into the future because, again, you have things like robotics, bionics, holograms, or holographics, whatever you want to call it, autonomous vehicles, you have artificial intelligence, you have drones, you just cell phones, all kinds of stuff that require these things in order to function and in order for the tech revolution to continue, right? So we want to have even more exposure to those as well. I believe NVIDIA is in both, and Palantir and ARM are, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Palantir and ARM are in AIPI as of right now. So we definitely want to have exposure to that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the numbers here. So with gpiq in this particular instance, the NASDAQ version, you can see 10.5% yield. What's interesting about this one is this one does actually go up over time. So if I show you guys here on the total return for this position, you guys can see the share price alone has massive upside potential here. So since inception, this thing is actually up 23%, but on top of that, you get a pretty juicy yield at 10.5%, and the dividend has increased. It looks like almost, not quite, but almost every single month. It has increased month over month, and generally over time this thing has gone up, so that's obviously a very good sign. So in order to get to the $100 a month, based on the current distribution, we would have to have roughly about $250 or 250 shares of this. So yeah, that would basically be about $100 a month. So 250 times 47. That's what we're looking at here for this one. Again, people that have massive portfolios don't really concern themselves too much with positions like that. It's not really that big of a deal. So I'm going to go over each one of these, okay? So we're going to go over gpix next, which is the S&P 500 version. And keep in mind, the ones that we talk about today are not exclusive to this list. We probably will add more over time. I mean, there's some others that we want to get to, like SPYI, maybe QQQI, rdte, maybe even a couple of the single stock Roundhill ETFs when they come out. But this is just kind of a starting point. So this is the gpix. Gpix. So ever since this one came out, this one actually has had a greater return of basically about 24%, as you can see. The share price on this one is a little bit more expensive, so which is to kind of be expected. I mean, it is the S&P. The S&P is not as volatile as the Nasdaq, so because of the lack of volatility, theoretically it should go up more than the Nasdaq. Of course, we all know that the Nasdaq, the volatility when it goes to the upside can be much more explosive than the S&P. So the dividend's not as much, but you guys can see it does generally also go up over time. So 34 cents, we'd be probably looking at roughly about 300 shares on this one, which again comes out to about $15,000. So the next one that's on the list here would be fepi and aipi. As you guys know, fepi, so this would be $1.08, or it's somewhere between $1.10 to $1.20 per share, depending on what the month is. And then the next one here is going to be aipi. And these are going to be core positions, meaning we intend to hold these longer term. So aipi, $1.50. So now if I go back here to the share price of these, in terms of aipi, we're already getting about $150 a month. We could already buy the rest of the shares if we wanted to, but of course we want to be smart about it. We want to wait for pullbacks. We are going into the most bullish season of the year, and we are also focused on crypto as well, which is why we have not piled all of our money into these dividend-paying ETFs. And on top of that, of course, everybody's has their own interpretation of this, but we like to try to keep some dry powder on the side in case the market gives us opportunities that we may want to take advantage of. Again, if you don't have anything on the side when this happens, you're kind of SOL. So you can see the 100 shares here on aipi, and then of course you have fepi up here. So I'm going to take a look at each of these. And again, the goal here ultimately, it was initially going to be $100 a month, which we're already at, but we actually changed that. It's going to be double that. Okay, I don't know why this is not working. Let's try the, there we go. We'll go for maybe 1 year. All right, so you can see it opened up at 50.48, and it is currently pretty much right about where it opened up. So the thing I want to point out is that we're entering into bullish seasonality, so I am actually expecting the price of this to go higher. Even with the share price just simply going sideways here, you do have to understand that the bulk of the total return for this one is, as of right now, getting paid out through the dividends, which still gives, if this remains true for an entire year, would still give you a rate of return of about 35%. Of course, you know, the potential for NAV erosion is here, something to keep in mind here, but again, you guys can see when this thing does recover from dips and end up going up, it does go up pretty fast, and it goes up pretty substantially. And of course, each one of these have, I think, 15 stocks in total in them. So in order for these ones to go up significantly higher for a longer period of time, then the majority of the stocks in these ETFs have to be going to all-time-highs, okay? So there is that. I'm going to take a look at the other one, which is fepi. Okay, so you can see this one opened up at 51.67. It is currently at 50.50, but you guys can see that throughout time here, it has been much higher. It's been as high as over $57. So at that point, it was a plus 10%, 10.5% return. Plus, there was also the dividend yield on top of that, which I think is roughly about 25% as of right now. Yep. So pretty much about on par with aipi, but again, of course, this one does. It's not AI specific. It's more so kind of closer towards the actual tech overall, not really so much specific on AI. But nonetheless, I would say pretty good return. Again, if the market as a whole is going up, semiconductors are going up, AI stocks are going up, the Fed funds rate is all-time lows, which, I mean, they would have to cut all the way down to zero or pretty close to it, then that should serve as anti-gravity to stocks, meaning that stocks just keep on ripping to the moon, right? Because the Fed funds rate being at all-time highs, and Warren Buffett has even said this, serves as something similar to gravity for stocks. Okay, it weighs down the valuations of these companies because it makes it more expensive to borrow. So when the Fed cuts their rates, I am expecting these basically to shoot to all-time highs. Okay, so next one's here, qdte. Again, total return here is 26%. The only kicker about these ones is that the distributions kind of vary substantially. Again, it is all based on options. And these guys do the 0 DTE, which is, of course, if you want to do 0 DTE on, I think it was, triple Qs, you have to have like a stupid amount of money, like $40,000 or $50,000 to do one contract of these. Yeah, you basically have to have 500 times 100 contracts, so you have to have about $50,000 to do a covered call. For these, so it's much easier and cheaper for dividend investors to just get into something like this. Okay, so taking a look at the xdte, and again, we want to own each one of these, so the Qs, the S&P, and the Russell. So for this one, the distributions are a little bit more stable, but still kind of really all over the place. That's to be expected. We're not really surprised by that. Still pretty good yield, 16%. And then, of course, there is the rdte as well. This one's 31.5%. Again, the Russell is massively undervalued. The Fed rate cuts will benefit the small caps, which is the Russell 2000 the most of all the stocks. You can see the distributions here are pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at the share price of each one of these. So we'll start with probably the most stable one here, which is the S&P. So pretty much ever since this thing got incepted, it's mainly just gone sideways. Okay, it's gone down, it's gone up, but it has more or less retained its value. Again, eventually we plan on having like 50, probably at least 50 different positions that pay $100 a month or thereabouts at a minimum. So this would only be about a 2% allocation in the entire portfolio, or in the case of 50 positions, the rdte, xdte, and qdte would all only be 2%, with a total of 6% of the weighting of the portfolio, which again is a little bit higher than 10%. But again, it's not really that much. It's 3 out of 50 positions. So that's something to keep in mind, and we are considering that, okay, because it does make sense long term to have diversity, not to have too much money in one particular position. So qdte unfortunately has pulled back quite a bit ever since that July drop we had. It's been kind of nasty. Of course, the NASDAQ is still below all-time highs, so once that does go back up, that should theoretically change. I would think this thing's going to go back to $46, $47 a share with how incredibly volatile the NASDAQ is. Okay, so rdte, this is probably one we'll get into a little bit slower because, again, it is new. We want to take a look and see how it's going to perform over time. So far, it is very volatile. It's gone from an opening of 42 to up to 45. Now at 43, but of course, until the Russell breaks all-time highs, this is going to be a little bit choppy. That's to be expected. Okay, last one here as of right now is going to be SPYT. Of course, there is a NASDAQ version of this too. If you wanted to own the NASDAQ, they have the triple QT instead. But the S&P version has less volatility, and the share price of this one mostly just goes pretty much sideways. Okay, it doesn't really go up, doesn't really go down. It kind of sticks pretty much right around that same exact level. But you can see the dividend payments here are very, very consistent. They're roughly about 33 cents a month. And again, they do pay monthly. So if I go over here to SPYT, and the goal for this one initially is to get to $100 a month. Eventually, we'll get to $200 a month, but of course, we want to be patient and be waiting to buy the dip on this. So yeah, you can see basically since the day of inception, this thing's been at roughly about $20, and it's currently at 19.30. Of course, I want you guys to notice every single time this thing did dip, it did eventually go back up to 20 here in September, again in September, and it went back up to 20, and then in August, it went back up to 20. In July, it went over 20. Even back here during May, it eventually did go all the way back up to 20. So this thing has a notorious track record so far of maintaining that $20 strike or $20 share price. So we have been adding to this in the recent days. Just so y'all know, every time it dips, we just kind of buy little by little. So that's another position. All right, so if I were just to, let's just say we were going to build this portfolio right now of these 50 positions, okay? So I would take a calculator, and of course I would have to kind of go down the list here with you guys so we can see fepi. So we would have about 200 in this. So I'd put in 200. TSLP, we want to have at least 100. So 100 from that one. Give me just 1 second. I kind of hate that Robinhood has us do this. There's not like a scroll button or something here. It kind of sucks. I wish they would fix it, but is what it is. So now we keep going down the list here, assuming that we get another 100, let's say from qdte, SPYT. We eventually want to aim for 200 on this one since it is so stable. It doesn't really do much of anything. And then again, aipi would be another 200. xdte would be 100. rdte would be 100. And then, of course, we would have gpiq and gpix would also be 100 each. That by itself, as a long-term position, would still yield about $1,200 a month. Okay, so in terms of the options positions we're looking at, because we don't want just dividend-paying stocks, we want options as well. So again, I've gone over this before, but we want to have at least 5 contracts on of both soxl and tsll. Again, these are strategic plays. There is a reason why we're doing Tesla specifically because of kind of the future technology and all that. So this is going to be a little off because, again, we're not at the start of the week. But if I were just to go on a weekly time frame here and show you guys the expirations for this, let's say we had, 500 shares of soxl, 5 contracts on a weekly basis. The options premium would be $300 a week. That would eventually come out to $1,200 a month. And of course, this number is going to fluctuate based on the value of the underlying shares and also the volatility of the market. So on the flip side here, you guys can see in the opposite direction for cash secured puts. Again, if you're trying to do covered calls, the best time to do it is when the market is going up on a given day, and the inverse for the cash secured puts. So in this case, the safest bet would be the 29 since it's under a 30 delta. Again, it comes out to pretty much exactly the same number, so about $1,200 a month. So if I add that on there, you can see that would then become $2,400 per month. And again, with the long-term portfolio, in terms of the dividend side, it's supposed to be about $100 a month with 50 different positions, which again comes out to $5,000 a month. Again, we want to get $5,000 on the opposite side with the options premiums as well. So that would come out to $10K a month. Okay, so TSLL, just going to, and again, we're just going to use a 30 delta here as kind of the basis. So in this case, that would be a 13.5 strike price on the call side. 5 contracts, $145 a month, or 145 bucks a week. That's what I meant to say. Or about $580 a month. So pretty good. Again, this thing is going to pay a lot of premium, but because of the 2x leverage, but it is also still cheaper, much cheaper than Tesla. You would have to have like $30,000 to do one contract to this on Tesla. So on the put side, on the put side, it's actually more, so $190 a week, and then this would come out to $760 a month. So let's just say on average it was $700 a month. I throw that in there. That then becomes at least $3,100 a month. So you can see how this can add up really quick. And again, these are long-term positions. We're looking at obviously the options. We will kind of scale in and out of that depending on what the technicals show us, kind of the performance of some of the underlying like NVIDIA, ARM, and whatnot. So just something to keep in mind there. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.